Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Education to order. It is Tuesday, January 3rd, 2017. The Portland Board of Public Education is meeting at City Hall and Council Chambers. May I please ask the superintendent to call the rolls?
Yes, Ms. Seeliger,
Here.
Ms. Vendel,
Here.
Ms. Hatzenbuehler,
Here.
Ms. Davis,
Here.
Ms. Thompson,
Here.
Ms. Morioni,
Here.
Mr. Eder.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Mr. Rodriguez,
Here.
Ms. Donato, Ms. Farah, Ms. Hassan, Mr. Siegel, and Chair Trevorrow.
Here. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just have a very brief chair's report tonight. I just wanted to announce the committee assignments for 2017, beginning with Finance Committee. Stephanie Hatzenbuehler will be the chair. Members include Jenna Vendel and Lori Davis, and the student representative is Christina Donato. Curriculum, chair is Marnie Morioni. Members are Roberto Rodriguez, Jenna Vendel, and student rep is Kevin Siegel. Operations, chair is Lori Davis. Members are Marnie Morioni, Roberto Rodriguez, and student rep is Saharla Farah. And policy, as well as public affairs, the chair of those committees will be Holly Seeliger. The members are John Eder and Sarah Thompson, and the student representative is Farhio Hassan. Just a couple of upcoming meetings to announce. Committee meetings in January will be held on January 10th and the 24th. Our next board meeting will be on the 17th, and we are planning a board retreat for Tuesday, January 31st. If you could mark your calendars for that. And that concludes my report tonight. Moving on to report of the students, we're actually tabling that until next month. We had one planned, but with vacations, it was too much. So moving to the report of the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy New Year to all board members and members of the community. First, I'd like to congratulate Deering High School. Deering High School has been named a Safe Sports School first team by the National Athletic Trainers Association, or NATA. This designation, which is valid for 2 years, is NATA's highest safety standard for schools' student athletes. Deering is the first PPS school to earn this honor and only the 5th school in the state of Maine to do so, according to DHS Athletic Director Mel Craig. In order to qualify for this prestigious award, schools must meet or excel in numerous areas. They include creating a positive athletic healthcare administrative system and providing or coordinating pre-participation physical examinations, promoting safe and appropriate practice and competition facilities, developing injury and illness prevention strategies, providing or facilitating psychosocial consultation and nutritional counseling education, and making sure that athletes and parents are educated about the potential benefits and the risks in sports, as well as their responsibilities. Ms. Craig credits a foundation of great people that are involved in Deering athletics for this award. Those people include staff, coaches, players, and of course parents. She especially credits the school's athletic director, Greg Tosi, saying his 11 years of service to Deering athletics have resulted in an incredibly positive impact on our community. Ms. Craig said Mr. Tosi has taken the lead in helping to implement, direct, and ensure that we are doing everything possible to keep our young student athletes safe. Greg has developed numerous programs to assist our kids in meeting the high demands, physical, mental, and spiritual, of being a student athlete. Congratulations to the whole Deering Athletics team, and especially to Greg Tosi. Thank you for all that you do to ensure the safety of our student athletes. I'd like to remind families that are of our current 8th graders of the upcoming open houses. One will be at Portland High School on Thursday, January 5th from 6:30 to 8:30, and the other one at Deering High School on Wednesday, January 11th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is the time of the year for our 8th graders to choose which of Portland's 3 public high schools they would like to attend this fall, and these open houses can help them make that choice. The Portland Public Schools offers all 8th graders a unique opportunity to choose between 3 high schools, each with its own distinctive personality and offerings, regardless of where they live in the city. Open houses at each school, and by the way, Casco Bay held its open house back in December, and other events over the next couple of months are being scheduled to assist 8th grade families in choosing a high school by the deadline, which is March 10th. And that's the commitment deadline when all those decisions need to be made. So I encourage students and their families to participate in these open houses and other events to help them pick the school that best meets their need. I also want to encourage our high school students who haven't yet done so to fill out Metro's new survey, to give Metro feedback on its service, and to tell the bus company what improvements they think are needed. The high school student survey is open until January 10th at 2 p.m., and students can find the survey link on our website. And it's also on the Metro website, which is gpmetrobus.net, and it's also on each of our individual high schools' websites. Finally, as everybody knows, Monday, January 16th is the day on which our nation will observe the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday in 2017. Dr. King's contributions to education in this country feel more important than ever in this time in our country's history. In order to help teach those lessons, the NAACP Portland branch has scheduled several events that provide opportunities for students and adults to honor the life and legacy of Dr. King. One event is for older students, one is for younger students and families, and finally there's an evening dinner for adults and teens. All of this will take place at the Holiday Inn by the Bay located at 88 Spring Street. The day will start with a youth summit hosted by the Martin Luther King Jr. Fellows, a youth leadership organization with a mission to advance racial equity and social justice in the greater Portland area. And a couple of our student board representatives are King Fellows. The second annual King Fellows Youth Summit will run from 9 a.m. to noon, and attendees will explore the goals of the My Brother's Keeper initiative launched by President Obama to improve life outcomes for young people of color and discuss efforts to implement this here in Portland. The event is free, but registration is required. Families of students in kindergarten through 8th grade are encouraged to attend a family celebration at the hotel from 2 to 4 p.m. This event is also free and open to the public, and it will feature theater, music, and the visual arts. The family celebration is sponsored by the NAACP and hosted by Goodwill of Northern New England, One Tree Holistic Learning Center, and the Portland Housing Authority. The day's activities will end with a reception and dinner celebration from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is a ticketed program, and it's suitable for those 14 years and older. You can visit the NAACP Portland branch on Facebook for more information and details. I encourage all Portland Public School families to think of this day as more than a school holiday and take the opportunity to learn more about Dr. King's legacy and how we can continue his work in our own individual ways. So with that, I would like to ask Principal Sue Ellen Santiago and Assistant Principal Bethany Connolly of Lincoln Middle School. They're going to present on the Lincoln Middle School's exciting school success plan.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year. Welcome back from vacation. It was definitely, to be back one day and have to present in front of you, a tall order, but I appreciate you rescheduling from my previous scheduled appointment. So what Bethany is handing out to you is a summary of our priority goals on our school success plan. But before we get into those, I'm just going to give you a few few highlights and a little bit of context. So again, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to share the work that's happening at Lincoln. This is Bethany Connolly, as Superintendent Botana said, and she is our assistant principal. Bethany and I are in our third year together as an admin team, and both of us have worked in various positions at Lincoln for over 20 years. So both very committed and invested in the success of our school. We are pleased to continue each time I come back before you to talk about our enrollment increasing. Lincoln's enrollment is up over 510. We haven't been over 500 in, we both think, about 10 years. So with decreasing enrollment at the district, seeing increasing enrollment at our school is a wonderful thing. And a good portion of the reason for that is our staff. And so we just wanted to take a minute and just talk about how proud we are of our staff. We have a committed, dedicated group of people that work with us, and people who are really wonderful and love working with middle school students are a special breed. And we have a lot of fun each day. We've done some excellent hiring, and we've been very lucky to attract such strong, experienced, and well-qualified teachers to our school. Over the past 2 years, we've also dramatically increased the number of students accessing their education in mainstream classes. And this is something we're very, very proud of. This means that we have decreased the number of pull-out and self-contained classes for ELL and special education students, giving all students in our school the opportunity to learn grade-level content with their grade-level peers. Our staff continues to work on communicating weekly with families regarding curriculum, assessments, classroom activities, homework, and suggestions for ways that families can support student learning at home. Having partnerships with families in the middle school is always a challenge, but we continue to remind our families that students need them even more when they're in middle school than ever, even though the perception is that they don't. So we're still working on that. Another thing we continue to build and work on is our teacher leadership capacity at our school. That's been a big focus for us the past 3 years. We've worked to create multiple leadership structures at our school and opportunities to promote collaboration, efficiency, and increase staff ownership of the work. And so based on that, the goals you have in front of you are our 3 main goals that are guiding our work this school year. And we're going to, as we talk through them a little bit, just share some of the successes that we're experiencing and a lot of the challenges which will be apparent to you, I think, in some of them as we talk through them. So our first priority area for improvement this year, I think, is a shared one across the 3 middle schools, and that's proficiency-based learning. As the work of the district goes in this direction with our high schools, our middle school is implementing this year Habits of Work and Learning, which we affectionately call HOWLS, school-wide, and it's our first year of doing that. Our school-wide Habits of Work and Learning are shared with King and Lyman Moore, and they are respect, responsibility, and perseverance. So what we've been working on as a staff is really trying to separate out these behaviors from academic grading and reporting, so that we have a better sense of what students know and are able to do as we work to transition our content grades to a proficiency standard system as well. We're teaching and assessing these HOWLS in all of our classes across our school this year. And so what's important is not only to expect that we hold students accountable to these things, but that we teach them and give them all the opportunity to learn what it means to show respect and what it means to persevere in math class and what it means to be a responsible member of a social studies class. And not all of our students enter our school with these skills being taught at home. So this is really an opportunity for us to level the playing field for our kids and give them an opportunity to practice and with these skills and improve them because they're habits they need for their lifelong work. A challenge with this has been that in separating out the habits of work and learning and reporting those separately, we're still reporting grades in a ABCD system. That's been really hard and really confusing for our teachers. They don't like it. They're like, this contradicts everything we believe about how to do grades because they're really moving in that proficiency-based direction. So as we work through this year and we get ready for next year, our hope is that we will be all proficiency-based, both academic reporting and habits of work and learning. We've been collaborating with our other 2 middle schools in the district to establish a collective vision for what proficiency-based learning looks like at middle schools in Portland. And as I said, our goal for the 3 middle schools is that we will all be proficiency-based starting next fall in 2017. It's an ambitious goal, and we're not sure, quite what that's going to mean for the fall, but we're determined to at least, as we talk about, kind of rip the Band-Aid off and get there, and then work through the challenges as we go. It's been really exciting for me to work with my new middle school colleagues, Ben and Caitlin, and to be able to come together as a team of 3 to support our staff and students across the district at our 3 schools. So we're really excited to continue that work together. We have been planning common professional development time across the schools by content areas. So at least one time a month, we have on Wednesdays reserved time for the King, Lyman Moore, and Lincoln staff to come together in content areas and work on this goal of proficiency-based learning. We're working on helping our staff identify common standards and performance indicators, designing common assessments, and ways to integrate the habits of work and learning into their classroom practice. The challenge here is that all 3 of our schools are at different places with this work. And Lincoln we have not been leading the charge on proficiency-based work, so it's been a challenge to figure out how do we differentiate and respect everybody's time and where they're at and still move along towards that common goal. But we are really pleased with the progress that we're making. Our second goal is reading, and before I talk about it, if you were to look at our achievement data, you would see that reading isn't the biggest area of need. It's math. And if you glance across here, you don't see math as one of our goals. And I just wanted to touch upon the reasons for that. Having been a math teacher at Lincoln, I think math is very important. And looking at our scores, it's an area that as a district, we have got to spend some time and energy focusing. And across the district, across the state. So why are we focusing on reading and not math? We are continuing some work that we started 3 years ago in the area of literacy, and we're making really strong gains. So while we recognize math as an area of concern, given that we are in the process of identifying a new middle school math program, we as a staff and as an admin team made a conscious decision to concentrate our efforts this year on reading, an area that all subject areas can influence and impact. Also an area based on data that our students still need work and improvement. So we're going to get to math very soon. You will all be talking to you about that next year as one of our goals. We're still working on math, by the way. So in reading, what we're working on doing is increasing our students' fluency and comprehension of nonfiction texts across content areas. As a teacher who has spent the majority of my career at the middle school, I was not trained to be a teacher of reading. I was not trained to really understand, being a math teacher, what role reading played in my class or what comprehension and fluency of nonfiction and informational text even meant. But what we realize is that as students are entering middle school and expected to progress through high school and beyond, their expectations to read and understand and engage with greater amounts of informational text is huge. In elementary school, there's a bigger focus on fiction. Kids love fiction. Teachers love to teach fiction. It's not what kids are needing to know how to do. And so we're really having to shift our focus to the nonfiction and informational text, which isn't easy. It's not everyone's favorite thing to do because it's hard. And our data indicates that this is an area that our students struggle with. But we know it's important, and so we're making it a priority. We're working to design a system of interventions, supports, and enrichment based on data and student needs. In our classrooms, our teachers, as do all the teachers across this district, have a wide range of diverse learners in their classrooms, and we continue to work on trying to have our teachers focus on results. We are working to develop a systematic and consistent way of analyzing classroom-level data in order to inform our instruction and improve student achievement for all students, no matter what their starting point is. We are providing personalized learning opportunities and cultivating a growth mindset in order to have the goal of closing the achievement gap and setting high expectations for all learners. It's easy when you look at data to say, oh my gosh, we really have to focus on the kids that struggle, and we do. But it's also our obligation to move all kids at all levels to be better and help them to improve. One of the things that we worked to do last year with the support of some district personnel is to pilot a reading program this year, and we were able to pilot it school-wide, which is a gift, called Reading Plus. And Reading Plus is not something that's been used in this district before, so we're trying it out. What was attractive about Reading Plus to us is that it's highly engaging, important for middle school reluctant readers, and it's all nonfiction text, and it has built-in options for student choice. So if a student's interested in fantasy, I'm sorry, that's a bad example because I'm going to the fiction text. Sports versus nature, they have some choice about what they read, which is really important for our adolescents. It's also on a web-based platform, so it can be used both in and out of school, and it is at a variety of levels from early elementary through post-secondary. So this has given us a platform in which we can really try to personalize reading instruction and build fluency and comprehension for all of our students. So it's very exciting, and our kids, while skeptical at first, are getting into it. We just ran a big contest before break, and there's lots of reading progress happening at our school, so we're excited to look at the data and see the impact. We're also working to increase student ownership of data and actively involve students in goal setting to review their progress towards standards. So while we as teachers look at the data and know where students are in terms of their reading, we want to help the students understand where they are and where they need to get. So Reading Plus is a great tool for this. It gives students immediate feedback, and teachers can engage with them and their results on a daily basis. In addition, we have designated a time this year, school-wide, for reading focus, in addition to English language arts classes and in addition to literacy intervention classes. We added a responsive academic period at the end of our day called Period 7. It's a very creative name. It's the 7th period in our day. And because it doesn't really matter what we call it, it needed to be something different, and we needed to really help define it. So what's happening during this time is that weekly, we have it 4 times a week. Weekly, there are 2 times a week that have a dedicated focus on reading for everybody in the school. What happens during this dedicated reading focus time there are small instructional groups that are happening. These are mostly made up of our most struggling readers, who are primarily from our ELL and special ed population, but not entirely. In addition to this also gives students time to use Reading Plus at their level. And teachers are also doing structured read-alouds with our middle school students. They're doing content-specific reading. They're conferring with students about what they're reading, and they're getting to know on a very personal level their students as readers. This is all, again, in addition to mainstream English language arts classes, which now we're proud to say more than 96% of our students are in daily. And we also provide the additional language and literacy support classes for students based on data. So we have a nice tiered system of support building in our school in reading. So as I referenced at the beginning, having been a middle school teacher majority of my life, we were not trained to be teachers of reading. So one of the things that we've had to do is figure out how do we embed professional development for our content area teachers, teachers of science, social studies, health, etc. How do we embed this PD time so that they can gain the instructional strategies that they need to have in order to help teach reading to kids in their classes, not just expect that they understand and can read all the texts that are put in front of them. So this has been a big challenge, but with the support of our teaching strategist, Blair Atherton, who specializes in literacy, we've been able to work with our staff the past couple of years, primarily the social studies staff and the science staff, really lifting this work. Science more recently, but these teachers are learning instructional strategies that will support their students in becoming stronger readers of nonfiction texts, so that students understand reading goes across all areas. It's not just in your one ELA class every day. And our final, but not only, area that we're working on is the area of social emotional learning. And this is, again, in our experience, not something that time has been dedicated for at the middle school level. But it's so important. So beginning each day in our school, we started this last year, our students begin each day in Lions Pride groups. We're the Lincoln Lions, and lions travel in prides, so that's why it's Lions Pride, to strengthen relationships and communication between teachers, students, and families. So students begin and end their day in the same room. Kind of gives them a home base, a place to kind of hang their hat, if you will, and store their laptops, literally. They also have the opportunity to connect with a significant adult who's looking for them each day and says goodbye to them every day in the afternoon. And they have breakfast in the classroom each morning. And it's also our first screen for attendance. So if a teacher recognizes a student's not there for a period of time, the teachers are reaching out and contacting the families and saying, you know, where's Johnny? We've really missed him past couple of days. And so that's been a good help in getting our kids to school. We continue to implement a social emotional curriculum school-wide. Last year when I talked to you, we were piloting Second Step in 6th and 7th grade during the second half of the year. That was a huge challenge. To pilot something new like that, the second half of the year, we were met with a lot of resistance from both students and teachers. So this year, we started from day one. We fully implemented Second Step in grades 6, 7, and 8. Admittedly, it's been a lot easier in the 6th grade than it has the 8th grade, an easier sell to talk about feelings and empathy and problem solving with the younger students. But really, the big reason for that is that at our feeder elementary schools, two of our biggest ones, Riverton and at Hall, students have experienced Second Step since kindergarten. So then they come to Lincoln this year and like, oh yeah, Second Step, we know what that is. We do it. So as we continue this work each year, we know it's going to get easier, and easier for our teachers and easier for our kids with practice. This is makes also great connections with our habits of work and learning that I talked about earlier, because the respect, responsibility, and perseverance connect a lot with the curriculum that it's embedded in Second Step. We also have a partnership with Ripple Effect, in which our students are practicing and have the opportunity to build and reinforce all the skills that they're learning, these social emotional skills, in an authentic, experiential way. So really, the social emotional curriculum has started to become really a thread through our school. It's not just one time a week when they're doing Second Step. So it's continued conversations, continued attention to paying attention to students and their feelings and how they look at themselves, and talk about that as it relates to their learning. Excuse me. We've also continued to engage our staff in professional development about the adolescent brain and trauma-informed practices. We've been partnering with Portland Defending Childhood. This is the 3rd year now, I believe. And they are such an excellent resource and support for our school, and we're so grateful to have them there. Whenever we need anything, we just call Barrett Wilkinson. She's amazing. In addition, this last one is one that we hesitated to put on here, but it's definitely one of the things that we're working on. So we're working to incorporate restorative practices in our approach to student behavior and discipline. So in the past couple of years, as we've learned about the adolescent brain, and as we've learned about trauma-informed practices, we realized, oh, there's a huge disconnect between our current system of suspensions, detentions, etc., and what we know and truly believe as a staff is the best way to approach students. So now, our approach in the school has changed, but we still live within a system that doesn't support that. And having been an assistant principal prior to Bethany, who experienced that disconnect, it's very hard, and she's experiencing it too, and so are our teachers. So our goal now is to really expand this kind of grassroots effort that started in our school, where staff have been learning about restorative practices, implementing circles in their Lions Pride and in their classes as they talk through issues and problems with kids. Our school counselors and social workers really leading this work as well. And we're so excited for the potential for this to go school-wide, because it will really reinforce our beliefs about helping all students be successful even or especially those who struggle behaviorally, because we want them to have access to school as well. We don't want to be sending them home. So in that summary, hopefully you've gotten a sense of what our work is. We encourage you to visit. We'd love to have you come visit Lincoln. It's a great place, and it is so different than it was even 5 years ago. And it continues to just be an amazing place, primarily because of our students and our staff. So thank you for your time. I don't know if anyone has, do I do questions or?
Questions, Mr. Eder?
Thanks for a really relatable presentation. At the top, you mentioned turning away from pullouts. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. So a few years ago, we had students were taking self-contained English language arts classes where they were, they're significantly below grade level. So the idea was they can't be successful in their 7th grade English class, so we need to give them a different class over here. And we did that for English. We did that for math. We did it for students who were learning English. Like, they don't have the language to succeed in the math class. They had their own math class. And what we realized was that those students were being assessed on the same grade level skills as all their grade level peers, but they had no opportunity to access it. And by denying them the opportunity because of where they're at, they're always going to be behind. So one of the things that we've been working on is, not just saying, oh, no more self-contained classes, the students are all in the mainstream, deal with it, because that's really hard, is figuring out how we use our staff, our ELL staff, how we use our special education staff and our other ed techs and support staff to really create co-teach environments and to have these specialists planning with our teachers. We have the luxury of having common planning time in the middle school. We're very lucky. But we use that common planning time so that the specialists, both ELL and special ed, and even the gifted and talented staff, can work with teachers to say, at the planning phase, you've got all this range of learners in your class, you have a learning target, how are you going to work to make sure that all kids can access it? And what's the standard and how are you going to adapt? And so it's definitely not easy. Bethany and I talk about, we were teachers at Lincoln, and if we had to step back in the classroom today, we would struggle. It is hard, but it's the right thing to do for kids, and we see kids making gains that they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do before.
Other questions? Ms. Morioni?
Thank you both.
Sure.
This is very exciting information. Both my boys, as you know, went through amazing Lincoln, and now they are reaping the benefits of the math hard work of the math teachers. And I appreciate you discussing the reading, because I think you're right about reading nonfiction. It's definitely an area that if they're not used to it sooner rather than later, then it definitely, for high school, it can be hard. So I appreciate the emphasis there. But I did want to ask you, you mentioned identifying new middle school math program. Can you talk a little bit more about that? It's the first time I heard we were considering a new math program for the middle schools. So
Sorry to bring
No,
that
no,
news
it's
to you.
okay.
So what we've been doing, working for the past 2 years, actually, we have a committee that is cross schools, teachers and administration and district leadership, working on looking at, we haven't been using with fidelity a common program. And the challenge, even within, just to talk about Lincoln, even within my school, what happens in one house versus another house at the same grade level in math is different. And so when you look at our results, something isn't working, and it's not just not working at Lincoln, because if it was working somewhere else, we'd be looking there. It's not working at any of our schools. And so one of the things we've realized is that we need to have some common curriculum and some structure. We're struggling with what does that look like? Does it mean we all have to be lockstep, like following a book? No. But we need a common guide that's going to, really push us to get kids where they need to be in math. And our teachers are spending a lot of time across all 3 schools, I would say, developing their own lessons, like from scratch, everything. And it's just not a good use of their time. They should be spending that time thinking about how they're going to differentiate and assess differently and things like that. So I think, one of the things we're trying to do is come up with what is important to us, what are our common beliefs as a math department across the district, And that has been really successful. We've worked out, what's important to us and where we want to be. And now we're looking at some different resources that we think might be able to guide us. And hopefully, I'm optimistic that we'll be able to bring to the board a recommendation for what we might purchase. I'm looking at Sharon. She's nodding, so that's good. That's a good sign. But more importantly than just buying something is the idea that it will give us something in common that we can really work with together, because we've had things before and there hasn't been a commitment to really using them with fidelity. And that's what's most important to me, is that we give something a chance, we really give it a try, and we have to support our teachers and support our students. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does, and I think where I thought that I thought we already had a math program, but you're right, it's been 2 years of development now. I mean, so it seems very much like time to get something in place.
And there was a math program purchased previously.
Yeah.
It never really stuck in the district, and basically it's not being used.
Okay.
So we've realized that we need to make some changes there.
And then my final, talking about the social emotional learning, I was just reading a TED Talk or listening to a TED Talk recently regarding social emotional well-being, and how one of the main things in this generation is the technology that they're using. They become so detached from one-on-one conversations amongst their peers. So it's really great to know that this is starting, this is an area that in elementary school, they're not attached to their phones yet, but I think in middle school, when they start to, become more engaged with technology, they become more detached to one another. So I'm really happy to know that you're focusing on that. I think that'll go a long way, so I appreciate that. And it'll obviously help them in high school even more, too.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
And whether or not Second Step is the tool, we're still in that pilot phase with that, but most importantly is that our staff has embraced making time in our busy day for that, which is pretty huge in a secondary schedule, and that we're all getting comfortable with, like, I wasn't trained as a teacher of reading. I also, as a middle school teacher, was not trained in talking about feelings, right? So that's been another area of professional development for our staff about why it's important and how you can do it with adolescents in a way that feels okay to kids. And again, we see big gains happening there.
I think one thing that's really important, I'm okay without the microphone. In the questions that you asked and the things Sue Ellen talked about, is for us, a lot of what we have worked on doing as an administrative team is to promote equity for all of our kids. And so when that came up as one of the goals of our district comprehensive plan, we felt like, oh, good, we're kind of doing the right work. But in terms of, equity of access to mainstream classes and to grade level content and opportunity to learn, that was so important. And equity of all kids, not assuming that kids come to us with the social emotional skills they need to be successful, which will help them be successful with the habits of work and learning, that if we want kids to treat each other a certain way and act a certain way and approach their learning and our community in a certain way, we have to teach them how to do that. And so a lot of the decisions we've made and the work we've done with our staff is to provide equitable access for all of our kids. So it's a challenge, but also I think something that we've made some really good gains in.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I'll just finish up by saying kudos to you and your staff. A great job, and thank you very much for your hard work.
Other questions? Ms. Vendel?
Thank you so much for your presentation. Excellent job. I wanted to follow up on something that you said in response to Ms. Morioni's question. And the term that you used is working in silos as a way to describe the practice of math instruction. It occurred to me that that term was used to describe the culture of work between content area departments and schools across the district when I first became a part of the board in 2009. And this presentation really reflects a lot of the systemic changes. I think that we we've been wanting to do over the years, and it reflects the deliberate intention to really, work with staff, work with where students are at, really work to address the social emotional needs, working with where the child is at, and also to collaborate with your colleagues across the district. Now, I'm wondering a little bit more with the proficiency-based learning and your work with in collaboration with the 3 middle schools. Is that something that is also carried through with other areas such as the middle school math program and other district-wide curriculum and programs?
Sure. Absolutely. So each of our 3 middle schools, thankfully, for the past 2 years, have been able to have content area teacher leaders in our 4 core content areas of math, science, social studies, and English language arts. And so we have brought together those teachers on multiple occasions across the 3 schools as they're leading kind of the work back at the ranch in the schools to do that. And being able to sit down as an administrative team, we include our assistant principals, we include our teaching strategists, and we also include those teacher leaders. That's where the conversation, yes, we might be talking about proficiency, but in doing that, it's also extending way beyond. So our math teachers across the district, for example, right now are taking a course through Stanford, is that right? Mm-hmm. Joe Bowler course. And so they're having a common experience of learning together that is grounded in what we identified as a district math group to be our vision for mathematics in Portland Public Schools at the middle school. And so I think that these things don't happen in like buckets. There's a lot of integration, yet our schools are different. And so when, we're not an expeditionary learning school, we do a lot of the same things, but we are not an expeditionary learning school. So there's certain things that we need to respect are different in our approach, but the outcomes for all kids need to be the same. It shouldn't matter which middle school you go to in this district, what kind of an education you get. It shouldn't matter at our school which teacher you get for math as to what experience you get as a learner. And so we've got to somehow, within those unique things that make our school special and unique, figure out how do we ensure some consistency, because in my opinion, that is critical for our students. We have a lot of transiency back and forth, and it's the right thing to do for kids. So definitely those conversations are happening across the district.
Other questions? Oh, yes.
Hello, that was a great presentation. Thanks for presenting. So in regards to social and emotional learning, I was going to actually talk about the same TED Talk because I watched that too, but more specifically incorporating restorative practices, I think that's a huge step, and especially looking at like being a high schooler, you really understand different systems, and this is a huge thing to tackle, but like, I don't know, I just kind of wanted to reassure you that there's like organizations and like you can utilize people like us, because like there are people who are passionate about these things and will carry this out. And if you look at the data, a lot of schools are actually looking into this practice because it does help students learn and it gives them more ownership. And along the lines of ownership, I had a question about increasing student ownership, which is a part of the improvement number 2 for reading. What does that look like other than goal setting? Mm-hmm.
So it looks different depending on if we're talking about the academic areas or if we're talking about the social emotional learning or the howls.
Okay.
But really what we're trying to have students do is be really engaged with what our targets are for their learning, whether that's a target of perseverance or a target in science or a target in reading, right? So helping we, in the past, I felt like that work was happening behind the scenes and we were kind of doing it to kids. So what we're trying to do is bring our students into the process, making sure they're really engaging with what the target is, and then they can see, here's where I am, here's where I need to go, whatever the target is, and here's the things that I need to do to get there. Here's the things my teachers are going to do to help me get there. And really recognizing that growth mindset model of everyone's not going to get there in the same way, in the same time, but there's different paths that you can get to the target, and it's okay if it's not about comparing you to the person next to you. It's about comparing you to yourself and how you improve. So,
And I just think that, goal setting is certainly part of it, but I think there's a lot more self-assessment and reflection that's embedded within different activities, group projects. You did a lab in science, and part of looking at, how did the lab turn out is one piece, but then the other piece is how did you work together in a group, and really not getting that feedback from your teacher, but self-assessing and getting feedback from your peers about that.
I'd just lastly like to say that I've definitely seen the progress of Lincoln Middle School being a rep through my siblings, because going to Lincoln Middle School from when I was there to what they're doing now, it's like they're reading books all the time, they're very engaged, and you guys are really doing a good job. So
thank you so much.
Sweetie.
And we didn't pay you to say that,
Yeah,
right?
it's not a plan, really.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jenna?
I just wanted to echo Ms. Hassan's comments on restorative practices. I was taking a class this past year with administrators and educational leaders around the state, and one made a presentation he's a principal, and he did a presentation on restorative practices in his elementary school, and how they were able to bring together not just staff, but community partners to be a part of, the wide variety of interventions, to address where our children are at. And so, yes, please utilize us as a resource, as a community, to support your work in that. Thank you so much for making that a priority as part of the social and emotional learning.
Thank you. And I think, when you look at any one of these items, one of the things that we've heard from our staff over the past few years is we really need to focus on what are we working on, because, even last year when I presented to you, I looked at what I did, and, we were all over the place. And so whenever you name a focus, sometimes it's viewed as at the expense of something else. But the fact of the matter is we have so much competing for our time. We don't have enough time to do professional development on everything and to do it well. And that's one of the biggest struggles, is that our teachers are working so incredibly hard, and we have a limited amount of provided professional development time, some of which is already dedicated to the district proficiency work, as it should be. And we really struggle with trying to fit it all in, because you could take any one of these topics and work on it all week, every day, all year, and still not feel like you had enough time. And those resources are the things that, we look to the district for support with that, and we look to the district for support. We're not a title school. We don't have additional funding. So there's a lot of resources out there, but most of them cost money, which is one of the reasons why Portland Defending Childhood has been so amazing. And that's a resource that's been free of charge to us. And so we're maxing that right out. And so that's just something that's difficult for us, is how do you find the resources to provide the meaningful professional development that your staff needs kind of on your own. And it's a challenge. And you have to pick, what do I pick that is the most important? Because if I pick one thing, it could appear that something else, like math, is not important to me, and it is. So that's just one of the struggles, but it's definitely keeping us busy, and we're making some great gains.
Ms. Hassan?
Along the lines of that, I was just going to tell you, I keep emailing your references because I was telling a lot.
Great.
I want to get.
Thank you.
Come back and
Wonderful.
visit. We'll have a meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I would just say, wow, this was a great presentation, and I echo everything my fellow board members have said. And, hearing this, I was just thinking of our comprehensive plan, which we'll be taking up later this evening, and the emphasis on social emotional development and people investment. all of that is very evident in your work. So it's great as a board member to see that kind of fluidity in the district. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's important for each of our teachers to see themselves in the school plan. And so for us to see the district plan as we work together unfolding, we can all see ourselves in the work so easily. And it's just beautiful.
Great.
So thank you so much for this opportunity. And come visit us at Lincoln.
Moving on to report of the secretary. Consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of December 20th, 2016. Is there a motion? Moved by Ms. Seeliger, seconded by Ms. Hatzenbuehler. Are there any questions on the meeting minutes? Is there any public comment on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, is there any board discussion on the meeting minutes? None. I will call for a vote. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes of December 20, 2016. That's unanimous with the students in favor. Moving on to report of the committees. Curriculum, Ms. Morioni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Curriculum is going to have its next meeting on January 24th at 6 p.m. at Central Office. We are going to continue the work that Ms. Davis and Ms. Prey had started last year in terms of setting out the agenda for the year. Although I did talk with Ms. Prey this evening, and realizing that we only have one of the board members that was on the committee last year, we're going to do a lot of revisiting of some of the work that had been on the previous agendas. We are going to start with updating our district proficiency work. And Ms. Prey informed us that there are two policies, policy IKF, and policy, which is graduation policy, and policy IHCDA, post-secondary options, which are both with Drummond and Woodsum to be reviewed right now. And then Ms. Prey is also working with our athletic directors around policy JICI, which is athletic and co-curricular. So we'll receive an update with those. We'll be starting to take a closer look at policy IKC, which is graduation reporting system, as well as policy IKC-R, which is class ranking. We'll be going very much in depth in both of those. Those are policies that need a lot of review and work before any decisions are made. And so again, that's going to be January 24th at 6 p.m. at Central Office. Thank you.
Thank you. Operations, Ms. Davis.
The Operations Committee actually met jointly with the Finance Committee in the week before Christmas, the holidays. And so in discussion, we've decided to not meet in January since we just met. And so our first meeting, we will be canceling the meeting that was scheduled for January 10th at 7:30, and we will be meeting February 14th at 7:30 at Central Office and pick up the work at that point.
Thank you. Finance, Ms. Hassebuehler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to recap a little bit of the information for the joint operations and finance meeting on the 21st, we discussed potential capital improvement project needs, which far outweigh any kind of potential funding, at least historically viewed. And so thinking about prioritization and the method to that prioritization. Kathy Alves from the city staff was present, which I felt like was helpful to do that collaborative work with our staff present. We also talked about the state projections for state funding and valuation changes and all the doing our best to sort of Houdini those numbers and be planful around those numbers, I think was the majority of that conversation. The next meeting is scheduled to happen on, at 6 PM on next Tuesday, the 10th, at central office. The agenda is unclear at this point, and also potential for maybe canceling the meeting, given that we just met on the 21st, and we've not even been around really since then. So we'll be updating that information soon.
Thank you. And for Policy and Public Affairs, Ms. Seeliger.
Hello, good evening. So we have our next Policy and Public Affairs Committee meeting scheduled for January 24th, tentatively 6 p.m. It might be 7:30 p.m. We're going to figure out a good time for all of us and something that will not conflict with Janet's schedule on the other meeting that evening at Central Office on Cumberland Avenue. And we haven't figured out our schedule yet, but I'm looking forward to figuring that out in the next couple of weeks. And looking forward to scheduling our Public Affairs Committee meetings for parents and constituents. So stay tuned, audience.
Thank you. Are there any other committee and/or member concerns? Ms. Morioni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to let the public know that on January 19th at 5 p.m. here at City Hall will be the public hearing for our ad hoc facilities committee. That is in regards to the Buildings for Our Future work and looking at the $60 million recommendation that the ad hoc committee has agreed to move back to the school board. So please pass that information along, parents, community members. We would love to have as many as possible come out to tell us what they think about moving the $60 million bond to a referendum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other member concerns? Ms. Davis?
The Hall Building Committee is, I believe, scheduled to meet on January 11th at 6 p.m. in the Hall School Library. And we'll be continuing the process of working on building our state-funded Hall School, which is really exciting. For those who have not seen the plans, it is amazing what $28 million of state funding can buy in terms of a school. It really is quite impressive. So stay tuned on that.
Thank you. Any other member concerns? Seeing none, we'll move into consent items.
We have two consent items this evening. East End Elementary School received a donation of coffee valued at $39.50 for their fundraiser from Coffee by Design of Portland. Thank you, Coffee by Design. East End Elementary School also received snacks valued at $300 for their fundraiser from Two Fat Cats of Portland. And thank you, Two Fat Cats. That's it.
And moving into old business, consideration and action. Consideration and action to revise policy BE, Portland Board of Public Education meetings. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, and seconded by Mr. Eder. Did the superintendent want to speak to the motion?
The policy is being revised, as we discussed at the workshop at the last meeting, to afford more flexibility to the board in terms of meeting locations. It removes the requirement that the second meeting of the month be held at a school and leaves us more flexibility to be able to have meetings in a central and convenient location for all board members, and sort of from a staff perspective, the ability to be able to sort of make those changes, announce them, and be able to move forward. So that's the essence of this change, and obviously we would like to see that adopted today.
Are there any questions on the motion? Ms. Thompson?
Question for the superintendent. I know that at the workshop, you said that you were having Ms. DeBias explore potentially being here for the second meeting as well. Can you update us on that conversation?
Yeah, I don't know for all of the dates, but we do have quite a few dates locked in, including if the motion were to pass, we do have this room available for the meeting on the 20th. On the 17th.
Other questions? Ms. Hassan?
That would be the ideal location. We talked about this a little bit at the workshop. There are advantages of having the meetings here in terms of obviously the microphones. Not that you guys have them, but everybody else does. So we're not passing them around. It makes it easier for staff to do that. It's also predictable. Everybody knows where we will be on those particular days. We're able to stream and videotape and broadcast these meetings in a way that we're not able to do when we are, on site because of, technology challenges. So again, from my perspective, in 6 months, we've had half of our meetings at schools and the other half are here. This is what the audience looks like, whether we do it, here or in one of the buildings. We had our meeting at Riverton back in October, and we had nobody from the Riverton community that was at the board meeting, but we had 4 or 5 parents from Cliff Island who had reason to be there. They had an interest in an issue that they wanted to talk about, and so they came in a driving rainstorm from Cliff Island and were at Riverton for that meeting. So I'm not sure from my perspective that I've seen any evidence that having the meetings in different schools attracts people from those communities. And maybe there's stuff that we could do that we're not doing to make that more of a sort of an event. But, right to date, that has not been the major driver of who shows up for meetings.
Other questions? Ms. Seeliger?
This is more of a comment. If you're interested in audience engagement, we're going to be planning at least 4 of our public affairs committee meetings to reach out to public and parents and constituents this year. And I can keep you in touch with dates and times and you can help get some audience to those meetings too. That would be great. Thanks.
Any other questions? Ms. Hudson-Buehler? If it's debate, we should wait. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, is there any board discussion? Ms. Hudson-Buehler?
I think it's an excellent point that our students make because, but I think it's something that sort of should be discussed as to how it's most efficiently dealt with, because I do believe that it's good to have the board members in the community. Should the business meetings be that particular avenue is, I think, what we've found isn't the potentially most effective way. Evening meetings in the schools may not be as effective for community engagement as meeting people in their communities on a Saturday or another day where people are more available and in their particular community spaces versus in the school. So I support the policy because I think it's worth a try in this direction, given what we've seen for turnout in the other way. So those were thoughts.
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you. If you'll bear with me for a few minutes, I did a pros and cons thing here, and I just wanted to just review real briefly, and I'll do it briefly as possible. But we started in 12 and 13 under Mr. Karen, former chair, of meeting in 3 schools. We went to Lyseth, Reike, and Ocean Avenue, and the majority of our meetings were at Casco Bay. Starting in 13, 14, we started rotating and including peaks, as well as doing a tour. So the intent was, when we did our Star Board leadership review, overwhelmingly the response from staff in the schools, as well as at central office, was the board was out of touch with what they did. And so that was heard loud and clear as to being in the schools. Most of us work full-time, so we aren't in the schools regularly otherwise. I think a perfect example of being in a school is the Lyman One Middle School flags, the most recent example of being able to see visually what the principal there was talking about. Peaks Island, the community dinner that they had was very welcoming, nice potluck dinner. We get to see the students' artwork and what's going on. The principals can present their school improvement plans in their own school. And I think it spreads the access across the whole city. We never went to Peaks Island prior to 12 and 13, and now we go typically one time a year. I know it's not on the schedule currently, but I would ask that it would be eventually. And they rolled out the red carpet for us. It's the largest attendance of any meetings that we've ever had. I think that meeting at City Hall for both meetings removes us from schools, and they are what we represent. The public affairs is only one outlet for community to access us. We've had 3 meetings thus far, and while 15 to 18 coming out on a Saturday is, I think, pretty good attendance, it's different people than that would attend our board meetings, so I think we need to look at our full community. We've talked continually about increasing access to the board and to the community, and we're supposed to, I feel, expand access and not limit it. It was a comment about people not knowing where to go, and as the superintendent stated at the last meeting, as well as by charter, is the chair and the superintendent are to post annually the full calendar, and we also get an agenda 1 week prior, so it has the time and location on that as well. As I've said many times over the years, where we are voted onto the board by district, once here our votes, regardless of district, are votes for the whole city and for all students and staff. So what I would propose is before we change the policy that we think about putting out a survey to the PTOs, the community, and staff, and ask them very simply what keeps them from coming to board meetings and what would help improve attendance. How can we change up or boost our advertising for them to know about it? How best to get the word out. And the tours are not attended, and why? We have a big $60, $70 million referendum coming, and we're going to need buy-in from our community. So how do we reach them? Typically, with anything that goes on in this district, I get lots of emails and phone calls from community members, and they're not shy about letting me know how they feel about things, and I have gotten 0 complaints about us being in the schools or having access to us. I think typically no attendance is always good for the board because we've made everybody kind of happy in that sense. When they show out in masses, I think as before, of course, we want to have an audience, but when we fill the room, it's usually because we've made them angry. And so we don't like that either. So I would like them to come to know what's going on, be interested, want to be engaged. But I think there's a way that we can go about it. And if we start looking at the Star Board research that was done and the suggestions that they had, I think that we also learn some stuff from there. And I think that if we keep things how it is now, currently stated, until we have some data to base our decision on to change it up, all the better. And in closing, I guess that I would just say that while I sympathize with the changing up, we did purchase for the TV3 microphones and things like that to travel with when we started this. And so if we need to help with equipment in that way, of updating again, maybe we could do that. But it's my understanding that even if we went to a stationary, say, East End, that makes us still on the peninsula, we can't broadcast live anywhere but here or Casco Bay High School, and I'm sure I think we're limited now at Casco Bay as well. So I'll be quiet now. Thank you.
Other comments, Mr. Eder and then Ms. Morioni.
Thank you. I appreciate all of those considerations as we look to make this change. I'll be supporting this because just over the past couple of years as a board member, I haven't seen it, the attendance at the traveling meetings. Just hasn't happened. I have seen some attendance at the at our public affairs outreach meetings, and I'm encouraged that we'll be continuing those. What I like about this, and I'm willing to give it a shot for the foreseeable future, because I do believe that maybe our moving has made it so that people don't know where to find us on a regular basis. And I like that it doesn't preclude us from doing a traveling meeting. I do hope that we'll go to Peaks, because that's it's a great time. And it's there, when we go there, I really feel the exchange, because people really make an effort to turn out because they feel so special about having us there. But I just haven't seen that sort of exchange at any of the other traveling meetings, to be frank. If I had seen that, I would not vote to change the way that we do things. But it just seems like a lot of effort for very little return. But in any case, I'll be supporting this for the foreseeable future, because we could always change, and we can still. This change doesn't prevent us from trying traveling meetings wherever we'd like. So thank you.
Ms. Morioni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will not be supporting this tonight, and a lot of it has to do with what Ms. Thompson reviewed with regards to the history of what we had, the intent behind this. Whether we have audience or not, whether we have it here and not have about as many as we have it in our school, I think it's the intent around trying to be out in the community. I do not agree with the fact that it should be convenient to board members to get to a meeting. That's not why we were elected. We were elected to be out into our schools and show that we are recognizing the work in our schools. I would support this tonight if we had had some survey done, if there had been some discussion with principals around this and staff, even with students, understanding how it would be just a little bit more work around this, honestly. But just for us to decide tonight that this is what we're going to do, have it here every meeting. I understand the convenience, and I understand the part about our community knowing where we are, but I question whether or not, again, are we getting the message out where we are? If we're having it, for example, at Lincoln, do Lincoln families even know that night, that we're going to be having a meeting there, and oftentimes, and we just have very busy families of community members, that it may not be a topic they're even interested in coming to hear. Our board meetings are intended to be our board work. That's the priority of the meetings, and oftentimes it's like watching paint dry, I imagine, for some. And so, but I do think just the good faith effort of being out into our community, seeing our schools, seeing the state that they're in, having our principals reporting to us from their schools, I just feel that connection is extremely important. And having it here every Tuesday, this is not going to also be a surefire way of getting more attendance. And also, again, the convenience of board members is definitely not an argument that I would support. So thank you very much.
Ms. Seeliger.
Thank you. I will be supporting this measure this evening. I think it's important that we have consistency for our audience, our constituents, our parents, and people who are interested in our meetings. And it's nice to see an audience here tonight. And I think it would be good to have some meetings, possibly on Peaks and on Cliff. I mentioned last time when we had a discussion about this, as Mr. Eder mentioned, is not preclude that, but I think we need some consistency, because we've been moving around over the past couple of years, and I think for one reason or another, the promotion has not worked. So we've had meetings without an audience and without the opportunity to even film at some points. That's unfortunate, because it would be good to have our meetings recorded. And it would be nice to have some equipment that works one place or another. And I will be voting in support of this. So.
I have Ms. Farah and then Ms. Donato.
Hello. Sit down, it might take a while. So I would like to say, shouldn't we be taking any opportunity we can for community engagement? I feel as though we can sit here and debate the possible negative of continuing going out into our community, but I think we must know we do so from a bubble. And I feel as though for the sake of convenience, it's almost selfish to be having the meetings continually here just for the fact of we're not having the turnout we would like, and it's almost dismissive to just stop it when we're kind of feeling tired of it. And I feel as though instead of throwing the towel in, we must do more community outreach. What can we do to have more people come out? What can we have to do to have more demographics show up? And I feel like whose fault is that? Because I don't know if it's from this end, if we're not doing more advertisement of saying who should be coming to these meetings. And I don't know, my vote doesn't really matter, but in sense of perspective, as a student during high school, I never knew these meetings happened at my school, and my mom never knew these meetings were happening at the school. It doesn't mean we don't care, it's just that that's not being out there in the different perspectives in our schools. And like Ms. Thompson and Ms. Moroney said, we shouldn't limit access, because I feel as though we should be even going a step further than we've been doing already. And I feel as though completely disregarding meetings in these communities, it is limiting access to these communities. And I feel as though going to these schools are important, but we should go to a step further, maybe go to Riverton Community Center to have these meetings because of the different students that live there. And it's all about access, it's all about the word, it's all about the intentions. If it's our intent as the board to be progressing our schools, if it's meant for us to be doing what we would like to do, that we would not be limiting it to just the convenience of the board members. And I feel as though, yes, our attendance for public consumption may have not been great, but what can we do to make that better? And I feel as though limiting these meetings to this room only, I know it's familiarity, I know it's consistency, and it might help, but we don't know that. So I feel as though instead of completely disregarding our community and completely disregarding the students and parents and possible outreach we can do, we should be doing more, not less. So I'm opposed.
Ms. Donato.
I was going to say exactly what everyone else said, but I also feel like we're here for a reason. We're part of many groups. I know King Fellows works with Okay. So I know everyone said pretty much what I was going to say. I totally agree with moving around each meeting, because I feel like we get a taste of each and every school. Like at Lyman Moore, I haven't been there since 3 years ago when I graduated from there. I feel like once you get a taste of that school, you get to get a taste of a different school, another school, another school. And I feel like just giving up now would be like just going against what teachers are telling us to do, which is continuously try and get up once you fall, keep going, keep going. And along with that, we're student representatives for a reason. We're a part of various groups. I'm a part of a group called Pseudo, a youth-created and youth-led group. They're a part of a group called King Fellows. I mean, if these meetings are more convenient for you guys, then that's all that's going to show up. I feel like if it was more in like Presumscott, I know a bunch of people that live around Presumscott, and I could go advertise that. And I feel like if we give up now, it's just the same amount of people are going to show up. I feel like we should just continuously try to advertise this more. I feel like giving up now would just defy what teachers are teaching us today. Thank you.
Ms. Davis and then Mr. Siegel.
I think perhaps we're applying the wrong frame to this, and that we're confusing people sitting in seats with eyeballs watching and ears listening to our proceedings. As someone who's worked both on the staff side in the late 70s as a city staff person and regularly attended city council meetings, working for the school department and knowing how many staff and teachers regularly watched the televised meetings. They didn't come, but they were watching. Having served on the Charter Commission and sitting in this room, knowing that while we might have a full audience and we might have an empty audience, how many times I went out in the community and people said, you know, the other night you guys were talking about this. One of the things that televising our meetings does, and streaming, now being able to stream our meetings as well, is it actually expands our access. Simply having someone, the ability for someone to come from a busy family or a shut-in or an elderly person to sit in the seat is a huge thing to ask. But you know what? You can turn on your TV while you're cooking dinner. You can stream the computer while you're doing something else. I actually firmly believe, and my experience in this community of now 38 some odd years tells me that we will expand our engagement and expand access to our community by being able to consistently televise our meetings. And then have a tape, which hopefully we can begin to, I know that we can't show it again or have it available on our website so that people can watch it. People used to say, I was ironing and I was watching your meeting. I'm going, really? But that kind of engagement, when people can both choose to do it and they can watch it as we're going, or they can choose to do it later, will actually expand the access for a wide range of folks, whether it's parents of young children, asking them to come now when they're putting their kids to bed and feeding them, elderly people for whom the ice in the winter is an impediment. They're afraid to go out, they're afraid to fall. I think we'll actually expand it. I think we're also confusing sitting in an empty school at night with being at a community meeting at Ocean Avenue and seeing International Baccalaureate primary years in action. Going to Reiki School and seeing a class in action, going to Lincoln Middle School and seeing students and teachers interacting. That's what really is happening in our schools. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where our achievement will move. It's not our sitting in a building at night. It really isn't. It doesn't matter. Again, we're confusing where we're sitting with what we're trying to accomplish. So I will definitely be voting for this. The one thing I might do, and because I am concerned about getting out so people know, is I think that we could, and I would like to offer an amendment at the appropriate time, to just make sure that we distribute this calendar widely, both in print and electronically. The policy just talks about having it on the website, and I think that we could do a more proactive rollout of our calendar, getting a printed copy out in backpacks, so that parents, here's the calendar for the year, here's where we're going to be meeting, here's how you find out where we meet, here's how you can contact us, here's how you can come and have public comment. And that is just good business to let folks know who may be coming here from another part of the country or from another country altogether, to know how you actually do access us and engage with us in the business meeting session kind of way. So at the appropriate time, I'd like to do that. It just asks us to do more in print and to collaborate with the city to make sure that our meetings get pushed out the same way city council meetings do to neighborhood organizations and other groups. So I will be voting in favor of this because I believe it will actually expand our engagement hugely over what we presently can do when we can't televise.
I have Mr. Siegel and then Ms. Bendel, and then I would say it would be appropriate to offer the amendment.
Hi. I have a lot of conflicting views on this, and I think some other people do too. I would just like to point out for people watching and just other board members that I don't think we're dismissing it, the community here. I don't think we're dismissing that because this amendment it still allows us to go into the community and to go to the schools, which I think is important to note. I also think from an efficient standpoint, efficiency standpoint, it makes sense for Henry not to lug all his gear everywhere. And coming to one place is a streamlined process for all the board members, I think. But community engagement is really important, and getting to our schools and seeing what's going on there is important. So I support this, and I will continue to make sure there's more community outreach.
Ms. Vendel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had a clarifying question in response to Ms. Davis's remarks. So I just wanted to clarify to the superintendent that regardless of location, all board meetings do get filmed and recorded and will be on TV3, regardless of where we're located.
Right now, they can't be on TV3, but they are on, they're on,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they are on YouTube as well.
Okay. So that does confirm that, my views that, again, a lot of people do watch it, I don't imagine that a lot of the viewing happens live, but it does happen over, repeat broadcasts or online. And so I guess my thoughts on this debate and discussion is a little different than where I thought I was going to be on this originally. When the change was first proposed to rotate the fourth meeting, the third Tuesday of the month, I was not in support of it because of the the importance of continuity and consistency in meeting location for members of the public to participate. However, the thing that's changed in the 4 years since this policy has been changed has been the importance of board members being a part of the schools, being able to engage with, the staff, the principals, the custodial staff, to be able to look at the artwork, to be able to really, be a part of seeing what happens inside of a school. And I say this because when I was first elected in 2009, I was a part of a board where 7 out of the 9 members were current Portland Public School parents. Around this dais, there are only 4. And I think about this in terms of my participation and my own responsibility as a board member to engage with the families, engage with the students, engage with the staff, engage with the schools, regardless of my personally where I don't have a family yet in the schools. And I see that as part of my duties as an elected official. But I think that having the regularity of knowing that you're going to be in a school, being able to be, immersed in a school culture, just for, a meeting, really, it really does turn the dial when you are, sitting on this side of the board and really, processing out the policies, the budgets. It's a powerful reminder that this is what it's about. It's not about the drama. It's not about the politics. It's not about the internal board dynamics. It's about students. And I think about what the majority of the students have said, and I think that I can't support the policy changes tonight because I don't feel like it would be in the best interest of students. I don't think it will be in the best interest of our work as a school board. And I also think that the policy change itself does not reflect the intention of providing continuity and consistency, because what it does is it strips all language of dates and location of meetings, and leaves it only to the only specified date is the inauguration date. And it leaves the assignment of the dates on an annual basis to whoever's the chair and whoever's the superintendent, which we've had a number of those over the years. So I would say for all of those reasons, I am not going to support this, but I appreciate the intent and the spirit in which staff has brought this forward to us. Thank you.
Ms. Davis and then Ms. Thompson.
Just as a point of accuracy, I believe that 5 of us are current or former parents.
I said current.
Okay. And some of us are former parents.
But I'm not, I'm
of
saying
children.
current.
Thompson.
Regardless of how this ends up tonight, I think we need to make sure we advertise where to find the board meetings, because TV3 is no longer TV3 on Time Warner Cable. It's 121-something or other. So just so we want to direct people to the right place, if you go to TV3, it's actually Boston WBZ something or other, so they can get up to date on Boston, what's going on in Boston politics. So if we're going to actually talk about TV3, we actually broadcast through CTN, which is the local station 2. So we need to make sure that people are understanding exactly what channel they can tune in on if should they be tuning in from home, ironing, or whatever they're doing. Thank you.
Ms. Morioni.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the point being about being more accessible, I think I'm curious to know, going back to a survey of some sort, how many families even have cable now, and how many, I mean, we don't any longer. We just do local channels. Point being is that exactly what Ms. Thompson was saying is that it's very difficult to find whatever channel we're on, and I do like the fact that we're streaming on YouTube and streaming online, but I still question, I want to emphasize that maybe this is more of a question of, is there further equipment that we should be considering, or other ways to make what we're trying to have happen, getting in our community, happen, versus just making it here, where, again, I can't imagine, it would be much more difficult for Riverton families to come all the way here to City Hall, and for these meetings, to be here in person. So I stand by. I will not be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Seeliger.
We had some discussion about perhaps having a survey about whether or not parents in this and constituents and staff would like to be at meetings here at City Hall. And I'm wondering, when we had our vote on moving our meetings to the schools, what sort of survey we had, so maybe if staff can report back and give us some information about the survey that we had, so we could look at those numbers too.
Ms. Thompson, do you have any?
Since many weren't here, I think staff-wise, that is, or actually none of them were here when we did it, and there's a few board members left, I think, that were here when we did that survey, so certainly we can drum up the results. And what they did was they sent out a survey to the schools, which we've certainly had changes at the schools as well, so it'd be good to see a fresh perspective. But it was very telling, I guess, how the board, and again, it's dated now, but of how we're perceived from some of the people in the schools, and that we're making decisions sometimes, and according, again, to that survey, and what I've heard is some feel we're out of touch. So I appreciate the school improvement plans and so on and so forth, but if we want to look back, we have that survey, and we could always do another one, and see what.
What year was that?
It was the Starboard report, Starboard leadership. I can probably.
2008?
Oh, God, no. No, it was 2013 or 2012. So it wasn't that long ago. I think it was 2012. I could find the original, I'm sure, in my archive somewhere. And it may be on the original online. Yeah, it's online as well. Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. So I too was a little bit torn with this, and I went back and forth, and I think so. There's different ways to look at this, right? If the intention was to improve community engagement when we started having the meetings at the schools, I wonder what effort was made specifically to draw in the community, or was the change it? You know, like just saying we're going to have them at the school. Was that it, or was there an active effort being put out to say we're doing this specifically so that we can have folks come in? And then also, you know, because I'm a parent, I get to spend time in the schools, and sometimes I take for granted that that it's not easy for all the other board members and even community members to be involved in the schools and see firsthand what goes on. So hearing what Ms. Vendil was saying earlier and pointing out to some of the cons that Ms. Thompson was bringing up, the challenges that we have seen firsthand, like we did in the Lyman Moore meeting, seeing the flags, I thought that was really special. And I know that I made a comment about how that impacted me and how I would love to be a part of that. And I think that if I'd only heard that and not seen it, it would have touched me differently. So I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable now voting against this change and putting a little bit more effort, if we were to continue having the meetings at the schools, putting a lot more effort into actively engaging the community and letting them know that that is the reason why we hold those meetings in the schools. But again, I'd like to know what, when we did make that change back in 2012, what was our effort to get people to show up? Thank you.
Ms. Farah.
So I guess for my own closing remarks, I guess to be more self-reflective, who do you all want to hear from? I'm confusing nothing and shall reiterate we should be specifically searching for identities that are not represented in the groups here. And I think that we can clearly see if we look around, the demographics aren't in the way that are reflected in our schools. And I feel as though if we do have these meetings in our communities, that we can have the opportunity to have these demographics show up. And I know that myself, Raheel, and Christina, I can speak for, would love to have the opportunity to work to get these numbers up and to get more opportunities and different people out here, standing here in front of us and getting to talk in that mic. And not necessarily this one in our schools. But community engagement is so important. I feel like I'm repeating myself too much for a simplistic idea, but that may not seem that simplistic. But I guess representation is something that is so important, especially in our schools, and seeing from my perspective, people that look like me, people that think like me and are in the different positions that I'm in is uplifting, and having students to have the opportunity to have their parents speak on the issues they see as the children. And not all parents and not the masses of our schools have access to our website to see when the meetings here are, or have that. But if they have the access to be in their own schools, in their own communities, to go out of their way, it shows that we are making the effort to go out and hear them. We could sit here and wait for other people to come, but that means that we are not making the effort to hear them. And I feel as though securing meetings here for the convenience of specific board members is just, okay. What was I saying? I don't know, anywho, I just believe that if we had more time in the community, we can work for it, and that it's not a negative, and it just shows that we are trying. And not everyone has access to TVs or internet, et cetera, et cetera.
With that concern, I would like to put this forward. I think this amendment would address some of the concerns about the, trying to push out the schedule into the community in a variety of forms. It's not entirely perfect, perhaps, but it was an attempt to try and get away from the policy. Seemed to mostly tell us to just do it in electronic form. I think I've got enough.
I have a clarifying question, Chair. Is this more about dissemination of communication versus location?
Yeah, it's trying to amend this to have the calendar shared widely in both print and electronic form. So insert this sentence in the first paragraph following the word locations, just right before the underlined, and delete the underlined sentence, which seemed to say the only place you could find out where we were was on the website. And instead say, the district shall share this calendar widely in both print and electronic forms to increase the awareness of all residents of Portland of the board's meeting schedule for the year ahead, and will maintain an updated copy on the Portland Public Schools website reflecting any subsequent changes to the schedule. So it's still saying that that is the place where ultimately you can find the changes if they happen. And then saying that the district shall collaborate with the city to include the schedule of board meetings in the calendar of city meetings, and hoping that we could also access they have a very good system where you can put yourself on a list, and bingo, your neighborhood association knows about every council meeting or every planning board meeting or whatever. And if there's a change in it, you get that. That is an electronic system, but it at least is one way of trying to drive it out, and drive it out broadly, remembering that the majority of our taxpayers are not parents. And so they are folks who ultimately we do need to have involved here, because they are the majority of the folks funding the schools, and getting their engagement is important. And that's admittedly hard at some points, because folks are tied to thinking, if I don't have kids in the schools, it's not my problem. But this was to try and drive our calendar out and really make it something that we share broadly, we share widely. It's an event, it comes out, sort of like the Red Claws schedule or whatever, that you can get it in lots of different ways and different forms. So I guess I would move that we consider this, amendment.
Ms. Davis has offered an amendment. Is there a second? Mr. Eder? We have an amendment on the table. Are there any clarifying questions? Mr. Eder?
We haven't been doing this before, no?
Is this consistent with our current advertising?
Obviously new, so I don't know exactly what we've done. I do know that it's posted on the website, and I don't know that anything else has been done.
Ms. Thompson?
So I think this is in the always increasing the access to our calendar. I'm all for. This doesn't get to the point of us talking about location, but I'm all for electronic forms and print forms and whatever forms. Because to answer Mr. Rodriguez's question, and also to pertain to this, actually probably doesn't get to your question, Roberto, but Ms. Davis anyway. So when I went back and looked at the communication and community relations, and it's very interesting when you talk about communication or how we perceive ourselves versus how staff in the community perceive us. And I thought there was a few bullets here that I thought were very interesting. And it said, while there are a mix of responses and perceptions regarding the board's ability to communicate knowledgeably about the school system's priorities and how active they are doing this, 47% of the senior district and school leadership respondents give the board low marks for this. It is clear that there is no communication strategy in place. Second bullet, without a comprehensive communication strategy in place, it should not be a surprise that no one agreed with the statement that the board successfully communicates its decisions to all those who are affected by them. The third bullet, while the board gives itself fairly high marks for engaging the public, parents, and employees in meetings and committee work, it gives lower grades for its success when it comes to actively advocating for the educational needs and interests of children and youth. Senior district and school leadership comments suggest that the board comes up short. The board gives itself good marks for collaboration with community partners, but it might be worth exploring whether your partners feel the same. So, and there's a few more. So I would suggest that it's also, while it's 2013, that people take a look at that. And that was done, again, through survey work in the district. So communication, all the more communication, the better. Strategy, all the more. I'm all for that. So I will support, again, increasing communication, but then we'll go back to the original, I guess, after. Thank you.
And just as a reminder, we're still on clarifying questions. Is Morioni, did you have one? Okay. So seeing none, then I would call for any public comment on the amendment. And seeing none, now we're to board debate. So I had Ms. Morioni, that's okay, Ms. Morioni.
I appreciate Ms. Davis's efforts on adding this language. However, I'm not supporting this amendment at all to this policy, so I won't be supporting this amendment to this policy change. So yeah, thank you.
Mr. Eder?
Since my goal of holding our meetings here consistently is actually to increase public awareness and public outreach, I'm sort of shocked that this hasn't already been in place, but it's been an oversight, so I will be supporting this amendment. And I thank Ms. Davis for her efforts.
Ms. Bendel?
I appreciate Ms. Davis's amendment and the spirit to increase and to also codify the methods in which we can communicate. I think that community engagement is something that's it's more than just distributing information. It's more than just, putting information out there. I mean, we've all gotten, how many move on email blasts or how many, different newspaper, headlines and, our inboxes get filled, we are on information overload. And I think that regardless of, how much we communicate, people are going to prioritize things that are valuable, things that are important. I think that the most well-attended meetings that we've had in the years that I've been here have been around budget cuts, proposed budget cuts, I'm sorry, and recognitions. And thank you, Ms. Crocker, because this is something that, as I'm looking back on the last several years, really highlighting, this great work that staff does that also happens to be in the buildings that they work, highlighting students, highlighting, exceptional, stories of service. I mean, these are the things that matter, that draw people out to come. And I think that, I think that this is a nice attempt to try to help, again, communicate, put more information out there, but it doesn't solve the core of problem of motivation around what are people in our community willing to participate and engage in? What are we asking them to be a part of? And to just witness our debate on how we have our meetings is not something I think community members would get really excited about, in my opinion. That being said, I don't think this would solve the core of the problem that I see around community engagement and how we don't have a communications plan, we don't have adequate staffing around a strategy or staff time to dedicate around it. I also think that, again, it doesn't solve the problem that I highlighted before around the lack of definition around our meeting schedule of times in the month and locations. So it doesn't address that. So I'm not going to be supporting this amendment. But thank you for Ms. Davis for submitting it.
Ms. Morioni?
I just wanted for the public to be aware that this is not typically how our policies work in terms of this never started in a committee. So this is why I think we've spent probably over a half hour working on this as a board. If this had been brought to us, if this has started in policy and worked its way through as a recommendation in some way, I just want to make sure that that in the future that we don't take our policies and bring them to full board. Even with the workshop that we had, I think moving forward, I'd really like for us to stay consistent with moving through our committees until it comes to this, where we have to debate it Thank you.
Other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I would call for a vote on the amendment. All in favor of amending the motion as in front of us? We have 5 in favor and all opposed. We have 4 opposed and three of the students. Kevin, which way did you?
abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had 4 opposed, 3 of the students, and 1 abstention. And that brings us back to our main motion. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, I would just, for my own comments, I would say I will be supporting this motion. I don't have too much to add. I think most of the reasons why I'm supporting it have already been said. I do understand the concerns that have been raised, but as Ms. Davis pointed out, I don't know that exactly where the room that we're meeting in addresses those concerns. I don't see City Hall as a limiting place. I see it as sort of the essential public building, City Hall, and I think that people know that in our community. So I do believe that it's important to make the meetings convenient for our staff, who has a shorter distance to go from central office, and who would otherwise be carting around a lot of equipment. And again, I would just say that the flexibility in the policy is also important. We are not limiting ourselves to meeting in one location. And in general, I think that it's important for our policy to be flexible in language so that we don't end up in a situation where we're prohibiting ourselves from something that we would like to do. So with that, unless there's any other discussion, I would call for a vote. All in favor of revising policy BE, Portland Board of Public Education meetings, so indicate. As amended. It did pass. Lori's amendment did pass. Okay, so if we can do that again, all in favor? 5 in favor. And was that, Kevin, were you in favor of the main motion? Abstain. And all opposed? 4 opposed and 3 of the students. Okay. Moving on to consideration and action to accept the comprehensive plan goals. Is there a motion? Ms. Hatzenbuehler, seconded by Ms. Thompson. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, is there any board comment on the motion? Ms. Morioni.
I just want to say I am really excited to be voting in favor of this. It was extremely helpful to hear superintendent, to hear from staff, to hear from partners at our last board meeting. And I just also want to say a huge thank you to Malia for all of her hard work. And I will definitely be supporting this tonight and look forward to moving forward with these goals collectively as a board. Thank you.
Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. I'll also be supporting it, and I appreciate Superintendent Botana jumping right in with both feet on this, and as well as Malia. But I also find it very encouraging, and the original intent when we did the comprehensive plan framework was so that the community would be more engaged and know exactly what our goals are. And I think it was really I wouldn't say cool, but it was really interesting when you had SMCC and United Way and so on and so forth at that meeting, and they know what we're working on. So the more we can push that out to further community groups and really get the community engaged in what we're trying to do, all the better. When we started with Boston, meeting with them, and that's how they got the engagement for their comprehensive plan, was for the community really knowing what it is and working as a team. So I appreciate them coming out the other night, and I hope that that continues to expand. So thank you for all your hard work.
Other discussion? Mr. Eater.
I echo all of that sentiment. Thanks to Malia for her help, and thanks for the superintendent to take this on right away and get our house in order. And I'm very appreciative of all your hard work, and thank you.
Ms. Davis.
I'm also pleased to be supporting this. I'm glad to see us moving to 4 goals, and just for the viewing public, the goal 1 of achievement, goal 2 of the whole student, goal 3 equity, and goal 4 people, talking about our staff and attracting and supporting and retaining talented and diverse staff, as well as advancing our student achievement. I'm pleased to see this move from our first attempt of a comprehensive plan framework, which was a step, and this actually is a comprehensive plan. And a strategic plan. And I think that with 4 goals and clear metrics, we can actually begin to continue the work that the district has been doing for decades, but to really focus it, hone it in, as we heard Principal Santiago talk about tonight. Sometimes fewer goals are better than more. And when you can really focus on what it is you're doing, you can really begin to move as big an organization as our school district is, both in terms of students and staff. And so this is a very exciting moment, I think, for us and for our students who will benefit from it, for our staff who will have a consistent and coherent plan to move forward, for the community that will understand where we're headed. I'm very excited to be voting yes.
Any other comments? Ms. Hudson-Buehler.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think that the most exciting part for me is the process that we've had for the last year with having the focus on education and having the principals and assistant principals come and discuss their goals, and then to hear Principal Santiago talk about how excited she was that when these comprehensive plan goals were announced, that she felt empowered and felt that that the work that they were doing in schools was aligned with the comprehensive plan, and that they continued to be a part of the creation of it. And to me, that's a place for bottom-up sustainable growth and focus. And so for that effort, Superintendent and all of your staff, I'm very grateful.
Other comments? And I would just say I am also very impressed with the way that this was rolled out and how quickly it came about. And when we first saw those 4 goals, I was struck with just how fitting it seemed for education today. It just, they're spot on. So I'll be supporting this as well. And with that, I would call for a vote. All those in favor of accepting the comprehensive plan goals, please indicate. It is unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative. Okay, moving on to new business. We have a first read to authorize the Portland Board of Public Education to recommend the Portland City Manager FY18 capital improvement project requests totaling $5,019,494. And where it is a first read, there is no discussion.
We do have a workshop after the board meeting to be able to discuss for any questions that the board might have.
Moving into personnel, we do not have any personnel items tonight. Moving into board focus on educational issues, we have a district MEA presentation.
While this warms up, today what I wanted to be able to do is share a little bit of an overview of our performance as a district on the most recent state assessment, the Maine Educational Assessment Program. So here we go. A little bit of background on the information that you're going to see. This is, again, a new assessment, so this is the first time that our students took this set of tests. So we have to consider it a baseline, a starting point. Most of the students in 3rd through 8th grade took this assessment called the Empower Me. I did not name it. Most commonly known as MEA, and that's what I'll be referring to through the presentation. The students in the elementary grades took tests in English language arts, math, and in 5th and 8th grade they also took science. At the high school level, which is in the 11th grade, kids took the SAT, and just a note that it's a different SAT from the one that they'd taken previously, so where it's still the same test, it's a different form of the test, so it can't be readily compared, and again, they took ELA, math, and science. Some of our students with more severe disabilities took an alternate assessment, and their results are not reflected in the data that I'm sharing today. And it's important to remember that while this is a baseline and it is a different assessment, it is aligned, it is supposed to measure the same college and career ready standards that the previous test, that the smarter balanced assessments that were administered last year were benchmarked to, so it in theory is still based on the same standards. And something that you may not know, all of the assessments this time were administered online. So just some key takeaways, and then I'm going to actually get into some of the data so that you will actually see some of this in charts and graphs. It's important to note that in the aggregate, so when you look at all of our kids taking the test, we look very, very much like the state. So we're very close to the state average, and that includes, you'll note that we have a significantly lower performance in mathematics than we do in English language arts. That's not just unique to Portland, that is reflected in the statewide data as well. A couple of important points, and they're going to be the sort of the focus of the presentation, is that our non-free and reduced lunch students do particularly well compared to both of our comparison sets. And so as I walk through the presentation, you'll see that we've tried to reference our information to districts that will be familiar to everybody, so that you have an idea of not only how do we perform ourselves, how do we perform against the state, and how do we perform, but also how do we perform against a set of benchmark districts. And I think this is interesting, and you'll also see that our results across schools are largely consistent. There's some outliers in different places, and we'll point those out, but overall you'll see that our performance is pretty consistent across the board. So you don't see that, where we say that our math and English language arts performance is similar to the state, but it's consistently lower in math than it is in language arts. You don't see a school where, their performance is higher in math than it is in English language arts, particularly at the secondary level. And I think this is probably the most important point for me, is that I think you'll see that we have a very significant achievement gap with our free and reduced lunch students. And so that's the only comparison that we are highlighting today, but we've started to look at this more broadly, and that holds for English language learners and for special education students as well. So that's a larger, this is the free and reduced lunch group is the largest percentage of our population. That's 55% of our kids. So I think it's something that, and we'll bring this out again later, it sort of supports why the equity goal that we've included in our comprehensive plan is a very important part of what we need to be focused on as a district. You'll also see, and this is, I think, sobering and not good news, that most of our comparison districts also have those same kinds of achievement gaps, but ours tends to be larger. So it's more, it's more significant than in some of our comparison districts. So let's start by the state comparisons, and let me just orient you quickly to this. And I thought I had changed that first table, and I guess I didn't. This is intended to show you how we compare against the state. And so the top set of bars are Portland Public Schools, and the bottom set of bars are the state. And we are exactly on the nose with the state. If there were actually numbers reflected in this bar up here, you would see that it's exactly what it is for the state, and same thing here. It might be off by a percentage, not a percentage, by a decimal, but that's about it. So as a district, we perform very much at the state average. And that's, again, in the aggregate, so when you look at our performance for all students who took the test. The same is true when you look only at the high school. So instead of looking at all students, when you just pull the high school out, you see that our performance is very similar to the state's. Now, we're going to look at this a little bit more closely in that set of comparisons that I think is going to be that you should sort of become used to these slides, because they show our performance broken out at for our what we've labeled ED here. That's educationally disadvantaged. That's how the state reports it. In my in my notes, it refers to free and reduced lunch students. It's the same group of students. So here, the top set of bars is the free and reduced lunch eligible students, and the bottom bar is the non-free and reduced lunch eligible students. So again, this is apples to apples comparison of PPS against the state, and here you can see that where our non-free and reduced lunch students do slightly, maybe even significantly better than those same students at the state level. When you look at our free and reduced lunch students, they perform slightly worse than the same students at the state level. And again, that's true both when you look at it at the aggregate, so K through 8 plus 11, as well as when you look at just the high school disaggregated. So I think that is, again, very interesting for us to understand that not only do we sort of in the aggregate perform similar to the state, but that aggregation sort of masks the fact that our non-free and reduced lunch students do some might say significantly. I don't know that it's statistically significant, but it is a larger percentage of students that perform at or exceed standards that are non-free and reduced lunch, but also a slightly smaller number of students at the that are free and reduced lunch who do not. So we have two sets of comparison districts that, hopefully over time will, sort of come back and reference for other purposes. And so the way that we did this is two sets, one that we're calling regional comps and the other one that are urban comparisons. And so the regional comps are districts in the general vicinity that, everybody's familiar with. So we have Cape, Elizabeth, Scarborough, and South Portland. And we have in the urban comps, these are districts that have at least 35% of their students are free and reduced lunch eligible, so a fairly diverse student population, and so that's what we've used. They were also readily available to me, not, sort of hidden under a SAU something or other that I didn't really know how to track down. So those are the ones that I felt were helpful for comparison purposes. And again, this is a comparison of just the kids that are not free and reduced lunch. And so here you see that as a district we compare reasonably well for those students. So, when you think of, Cape or Scarborough and, look at our performance against those districts, our students who are not free and reduced lunch are middle-class kids, for the most part. We compare very well with those districts. When you look at the urban comps, we do even better than all of those districts. And where I've sort of, because you have at your table, at your stations, the tables that we used with all of this. So if you wanted to look at, what this looks like for language arts, you would also have that information in those tables. I picked out math because I just wanted to use some math and English language arts, because again, the main point that I want to convey is that this is not, it's not like in math we're doing much better against these districts than when we look at it in language arts. In fact, I think we tend to do better in language arts than we do in math, but this is the comparison that you have for this particular comparison set. The same holds true. Yeah, Ms. Mariani.
Just wondering, what are those numbers at the top? Are those percentage of students?
Yeah, that's the percentage of students
percentage
that
of
meet
students.
or exceed standards.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I should have pointed that out. So this is the same comparison set of schools, but this is when you look at high school exclusively. So this is, where the other one was combined K through 8 plus 11th grade. This is just our high schools. Again, we compare reasonably well to our neighboring districts, and we do better than all of our comparison urban districts. So again, this is just our non-free and reduced lunch student population. And so let's shift a little bit and look at that. Okay. So this is now highlighting the achievement gap. And so here it's important to look at the way that this is set up. You have the orange bar on the top is the free and reduced lunch students, and the blue bar on the bottom are the non-free and reduced lunch students. So those numbers that you're seeing there for non-free and reduced lunch are the same numbers that were sort of isolated in the previous set of tables, but here it's set against the free and reduced lunch so that you can both see the fact that we have a gap and see that it's it's a very significant difference between the performance of our non-free and reduced lunch students and our free and reduced lunch students. And I think the other point that these slides helped illustrate is that, in this particular example, and that's not necessarily true, it's slightly, different in some of the other comparisons, but overall, we do worse than the comparison districts. So across the board, in this particular example, we're slightly lower or significantly lower than some of our comparison districts. Mrs. Davis, did you have a question?
Comparison districts are generally much lower in terms of free and reduced lunch. So they're I wonder if what we're seeing in this is the effect that you that you often see when you have essentially a more heterogeneous group. We've seen it in this district when we redistricted Jack to Clifford School. The same kids who were at Jack performed better at Clifford because they were suddenly in a school where they were not the low-income students were not the majority, but they were simply part of a much larger and more advantaged group.
I think that may be true in the comparison to Scarborough. I don't know necessarily that it's true. I mean, I can pretty much.
I think in the surrounding communities, I know that Westbrook is probably our closest competitor in terms of free and reduced lunch. They're a little bit ahead of us. These other districts are significantly different.
No, I mean, I know that it's true in terms of the concentration. I just think that it's also important to note that we don't perform as well as Lewiston when you look at our free and reduced lunch students. And, in Lewiston's case, and this is somewhat anomalous, I've not seen a lot of this anywhere, their free and reduced lunch students actually outperform their non-free and reduced lunch students. But that is, that's obviously not the norm for the other districts. But you can see that is true, that even, compared to Lewiston, which does have a very high concentration of free and reduced lunch students.
Theirs is even higher than ours.
And their free and reduced lunch students do slightly better than ours do, at least in this particular. I think that, I think you get the point, and we have more slides to make that point. But if I can find my cursor, where is it? I see it floating around up there, but I don't see it here. There we go. It moves this way. So this is just the high schools, but you can see the same pattern, and it's actually a little bit more acute when you just look at the high school performance. So again, we compare very well in terms of our non-free and reduced lunch students, but not so much when we look at our free and reduced lunch students. So we're going to shift to the last part of this, which is the in-district comparison. I, talked about at the beginning the sort of the key takeaway from our sort of analysis of the district performances. It's somewhat contrary to public perception and to sort of the narrative in the district that our performance across schools is not hugely different. So this is middle school up at the top, and that's high school at the bottom. And I think at the top it's math, and at the bottom it's ELA. But again, this pattern holds true when you look at language arts at the middle school or when you look at math at the high school. And again, you can see that on average we do fare well compared to I'm sorry, that's previous slides. So our performance is consistent across schools. It's not like somebody is really figured out how to serve our free and reduced lunch students in a way that would point to this is the way that we need to go as a district. So at the elementary level, you have a little bit more divergence, but again, we're roughly all of our schools are in that, this is in math, roughly in that 60% of our non-free and reduced lunch students meeting standards, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 25% of our free and reduced lunch students meeting standards. So again, there are some discrepancies there, and I can't tell you that I understand them fully, but certainly something for us to look at. Concentration might be a reasonable explanation for Longfellow, but I don't know what the explanation is for Presumpscot. So those are things that we need to look into and get a better understanding of. But I think it's important for the board to understand that the general sense that well, somebody's got this figured out that in the district, and it's because they're doing A, B, or C. That doesn't seem to hold true, at least from from what this particular data set would suggest. Mrs. Davis?
My assumption is, but I just want to check this, that I don't see Peaks Island listed, and is that because it's a small set, and so therefore the data is not released because it would...
No, they actually do
identify, or-
have some of the data, not when you get into the non-free and reduced lunch student. They do have their overall performances in there. But again, it's such a small set that it can bounce wildly from one year to the next as well. So I think that you should always look at those small school performance with a very very carefully.
Oh, yeah. No, one student can move it a huge amount. I just wanted to sort of note that it
that's
wasn't
right.
on
Yeah.
the chart, and nor is Cliff, and it can just feel like, were we there? And perhaps explaining to the public
no,
that that's why they're not
I
there.
appreciate you bringing it up. I should have referenced that. So that's it. The key takeaways, again, what we talked about at the beginning, very similar when you look at it as in the aggregate, but what I really wanted to do with this presentation is sort of get beyond those averages, which is what tends to be reported in the media and in state releases, and really start to get under that data a little bit to sort of highlight what is very stark achievement gap, but also the fact that and that sort of leads to the summary of the conclusions, which is that overall I think that there's reason to believe that if you are sending your children to Portland Public Schools, your kids are likely getting a really good education, very comparable to what they would get in any of our neighboring districts. But we definitely have a lot of work to do with our free and reduced lunch students, and obviously that's true for our students with disabilities, with our students whose first language is not English. And so we will obviously be looking at all of that more carefully. We are very much, I think this supports the strong focus on equity that I know has resonated with members of the board, as well as with our schools. As we've talked about it, our schools are aware of those numbers and know that that is our challenge as a district, and so they're excited to take on those challenges.
Do you know where the state set the cut score for the SAT for proficiency on this?
No, but I can find out.
Okay.
I mean, the scores are
Eric
published.
knows. Principal Pierce.
480 in English, 530 in math.
Okay. And 530 in math?
And that's the meets cut score?
Okay.
Done.
Ms. Davis?
Having spent probably looked at data for Portland Public Schools over what is a very long time, at least 20, if not 30 years, because I started my graduate school program actually doing a look back to the very beginning of the MEA scores. I think one of the things that is continues to be of concern, and we've been working at it, but it's still there. And we really, and it's the part that brings me to meetings every single time, and has brought me to the board, is our persistent achievement gap, because that has been there now for 20 years. It may be moving, but the gap is there, and so I am excited with the comprehensive plan goals, and to really, we need to focus on that, because as the number of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch continues to increase, but that gap is there for those students, that's not a recipe for success for our city. So looking forward to really getting under that and continuing to work on it. On a positive note, having looked at this for a long time, I remember when we didn't actually put up on a big screen the school-by-school data. So it is exciting to see that, and see that in public, because it was a time that principals didn't even see it. They got their scores and they took them back to their school, and that was it. And at that time, there tended to be a great deal of difference between schools, and there is much less difference. That's a good thing. The consistency from school to school across this district is remarkable, and it was not always there. So that's a first step, to have that kind of, it doesn't matter which school you go to, that the scores look pretty much the same. When we see the average, that aggregate average score, it may move around, but that's because of the distribution of economically disadvantaged and not. And so we've gotten underneath that and said, if you're economically disadvantaged, this is where you're going to be, and if you're not economically disadvantaged, that's where it's going to be, and it's pretty much the same across schools. That's great. That is an improvement, because there used to be schools where that was not the case. Thank you very much for a good data presentation that really brings us, I think, to the points of discussion that we need to be looking at. What are we going to do about that achievement gap? That is the biggest challenge facing this city. It is the biggest challenge facing the city. It's been facing us for a long time, and we've got to solve it. Our students deserve nothing less, and our city deserves nothing less. This is our future. So thank you very much, because data can really direct us. Along with our goals, we're ready to go. Thank you.
Ms. Vendel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree. Thank you so much for great data presentation. I just wanted to clarify that the MEA that we're referring to right now in this current year's assessment isn't the Maine educational assessments. They're different assessments, because we've had MEAs before, and now that they're calling it an MEA test right now is throwing me off. But it's a different assessment?
It's a different assessment.
Okay.
It's the assessment program is still the main educational assessment. The actual test that the kids took is different. That's the Empower Me for the, again, didn't name it, for the K-8, for the 3 through 8, and SAT for the high school kids. And SAT was a part of the previous one, but it's the new SAT as opposed to the old one. But it's still the main educational assessment, and that's why it's still known as that.
Okay. So I think that this is really helpful to, as a grounding place to, again, as you said, as a baseline to look at where we are compared to comparison districts, and our how we're comparing between students who qualify for free and reduced lunch and non free and reduced lunch students. The points, the key areas that I think about when I'm looking at data that is not just with students as it relates to class, but also race and obviously language. And in the past, we've received data that's been disaggregated. And I know that this, this was carefully presented as, this is the intent of this presentation, to look at where we are in our state, compared it to the region, compared it to other urban areas. But I will be looking forward to receiving more information on disaggregated, based on not just class, but race, and also making sure that we have that information as part of our regular, how are we doing as a district, for all students? Because that my definition of equity is not just, students who qualify for reduced lunch and not. My definition of equity is broader, and that was one of the primary drivers of me running for this, and being engaged with former Portland Public School students who petitioned and FOIA'd and worked to get previous superintendents to release data on student academic performance that was disaggregated.
And let me just say to that, a lot of that information is readily available. We are looking at additional cuts on it in terms of the time that we've had and the data that was available. I chose to focus on free and reduced lunch because I felt it was a strong proxy for everything else. I don't think your story is going to be any different when you look at all of those other groups. I know I've looked at, English language learners, I've looked at special ed, and it's no different. So, yeah.
Other comments? Seeing none. Thank you. So that moves us into high school technology refresh presentation.
Yeah, this will not be a presentation. It's just a pass out handouts. It's also in your agenda. Madam Chair, board members, Superintendent Patana, thank you very much for having a chance to go over this informational packet that we've put together over the last couple months regarding high school devices. One of the goals is we want to summarize the MLTI program, where it might be going, and also look at the program costs and choices that we might have in front of us starting in 2017-2018 school year. Going through the packet, the background, MLTI has been around since 2003. The goals here were, again, to build a statewide program for students and teachers that provide technical integration, professional development, and access to the 21st century tools to all Maine K through 12 public schools. Only the middle schools, grades 7th and 8th, are 100% subsidized by the state. Any of the other grades that participate are paid for at the district level through a lease through Maine Department of Education. 2013, Portland Public Schools, for the high schools, signed into an MLTI lease with MDOE at a cost of $2.2 million. This put iPads into our students in grades 9 through 12 and provided teachers with a MacBook Air, very similar to the one in front of you, and also an iPad mini. One of the things that was very surprising was the durability of the iPads that we ran into. Since 2013, we've had over $227,000 in repair costs for these devices. They just did not hold up into the high schools well, and they were not treated with the respect and care, but their durability just came into question. So one of the reasons why we've looked into different alternative solutions starting in 2017 and 18 is because of that, but also with the different changing in technology, the different needs with a lot of migration going to the cloud. 80% of the applications and school programs are now web-based, They're no longer device-based, which was, 5, 6 years ago, everything was on a device. Now everything is being accessed through the web. Portland, as well as other districts throughout the state, are looking at different programs because one of the problems with MLTI is the uncertainty of it. Very recent notifications we've received in early December indicate that funding is in question, whether the program will continue. It's just the future of that funding is uncertain. Now, just as a side note, at the middle school levels, grades 7th and 8th, we refreshed this year. So 7th and 8th grade devices are off of iPads. The 7th and 8th grade students have MacBook Airs that were locked into a lease, well, again, 100% subsidized by the state to 2020. So there's no cost to us. We will have repair costs associated with those devices. But then I want to talk more about the choices we have coming forward with the high school devices. Moving on to the next page. It broke down a 4-year trend of the computer purchases and repairs. There's a summary right there of $2.2 million for the MLTI lease purchase, $227,000 in repair. That is as of October of 2016. We still have to get through June, so we will have some additional repair fees on top of that. We spent $1.47 million for MacBook Airs for our elementary school teachers as well. We did buy additional MacBook Airs due to the standardized testing. We were using the old white MacBooks, which were no longer sufficient or reliable. And as of a test platform to move forward with Chromebooks in the elementary schools, we bought $300,000 worth of Chromebooks that have been very, very well received in all the elementary schools throughout the district. I did put 75 devices in Portland and Deering High School as well, as far as Chromebooks, so the students could be exposed to those as well. And they've been very, very well received. So here again, here's a further breakdown, the buyout payments, the repairs, the lost accessories, and again, total expenditures of $4.17 million, 4.1. Awful lot of money from 2013. So Superintendent Batata talked with me last summer. We started looking at different solutions. Before you in this packet, there's 4 solutions that we're proposing. One is a Chromebook-only solution. That's for staff and students. That's the least expensive, coming in right now at $915,000 for 3 years. That includes an annual payment of $305,000, insurance costs for devices. So insurance would be included with this. So students, we would not be charging a tech fee to our families out there, which I know have become a headache as far as administrating and tracking that in each of the schools, in each of the high schools. The Chromebooks, again, they can be insurance on a Chromebook is $19 a year. And that's theft, damage, anything, it would be replaced. One of the problems with this solution is training would be needed for staff on the Chromebooks. Obviously, our staff have Mac devices right now, so there would have to be a coordinated professional development session on the Chromebook itself for the teachers and how to actually effectively use the Chromebook in the classroom. Initial feedback from the schools is like it's very lukewarm to have the staff go to Chromebooks as well. The students, it seems to work effectively for the students as far as a medium for learning. This next solution, it seems to be, was very well received, and that's where we have MacBooks for staff and the students have Chromebooks. As you can see, this is about this is $980,000 compared to the $930,000 for just Chromebook solution. So we would keep all the staff on MacBooks, and we would, the students would get the Chromebooks. We would keep the existing MacBooks that we have, because we're going to own those devices as of June 2017, and I would supplement those with carts in the schools for any Mac-specific items, such as video editing, such as highly graphic art instruction. So anything that the MacBook really excels at, where there might be specialized silos of education classes, learning that would be going on, we would keep those and utilize that, and that would be at each of the high schools as well. This also includes no tech fee costs for families. We would try to drive coordinated and focused professional development. I know the Chromebook has a 4 to 6 year lifespan too as well, so very similar. These devices, roughly, we wouldn't carry any extended warranty on them. We would just carry the insurance as well, because we're talking roughly $220 a device versus a $1,000 laptop for the students. The last two solutions are Mac-only solutions. One where I've negotiated, due to our size of our district, Apple was willing to work with us to provide a direct lease, meaning that we wouldn't partner with the Department of Education. I'd go right to Apple, do a lease, and that comes, you see the 4-year cost, at $2.7 million. So that's enough to outfit every student in the high school as well as staff, and that's just with the MacBook. Moving away from the iPads, especially at the high school level, because the durability of the devices just isn't there. This is an annual cost with buyout. Again, we would do no tech fee cost to our families. The insurance would be a little bit more expensive at roughly $70 a device. The lifespan of the MacBook is 5 to 6 years, and devices would be recycled to schools for mobile cart use as well. The last one of the price comparison is the MLTI. And you can see that's $3.1 million roughly. The additional would be, one of the reasons is the Apple-centric professional development that's offered from the state through the Apple office in Gray, Gloucester. That they would come down and just teach you about, here's all the applications on a MacBook. Not to effectively use the MacBook in the classroom, but here's how you use Keynote, here's how you use Notes. So it's really not a practical application when we talk about professional development where we would like to go. We want to bring our teachers, give them the effective skills within the professional development to use the technology platform effectively to reach more students. This I built into an estimated 15% repair cost as well. So obviously there's a huge difference, and this is one of the reasons why the Chromebooks really need to be considered. The savings that we're looking at. Some of the review points that I'd like to go over. We've had favorable for the initial finance review from the Joint Operations and Finance Committee review mid-December. It was very favorable to continue to do this and look into these solutions. The Apple Chromebook combination, viable solution. And again, like I said, I have close to, at Deering and Portland, 80 devices in play. Casco Bay has got close to 25 devices in play, Chromebook devices, so the students are getting their hands on. I'll be expanding that by the end of this month to put 60 more devices in Portland, 60 more devices at Deering, and 20 more devices at Casco Bay. This is just for an evaluation. And those, once, depending on the feedback, we'll see where we will go, actively looking to solicit feedback. I've asked technical contacts at each of the high schools to set up focus groups of teachers that will provide input and feedback to the solutions based on this presentation, the 4 solutions, and as well as to solicit student feedback as well. I hope to have those the initial focus group meetings with the teachers and staff over the next 2 weeks. Like I said, the current Apple staff devices that we will own will be moved to carts, so we'll get the full lifespan out of that. And moving those to carts, take them out of the day-to-day circulation. So I think I'd be able to expand the 5 to 6 year lifespan to 7 or 8 years. I mean, some of the white MacBooks that we still in operation, some of the elementary schools and some of the ed techs in the high schools, they're 9 years old and they're still functioning. They're not the speediest things on the planet, but they're still functioning. The state has announced on middle of December block grants for MLTI that might provide an additional $68,000 subsidy for devices, what we go with, whether that's an Apple solution or whether that's a Chromebook solution. And we are recommending that the annual device cost be added to the district operational budget versus CIP, but those could only be applicable to the first two solutions provided, either a straight-out Chromebook solution or the Chromebook MacBook solution. And again, the Chromebook MacBook has been received favorable by by staff, by principals, and some of the technical staff that I have in each schools. My next steps, again, to solicit the feedback from the high school groups. Continue to monitor Chromebook performance. We have noticed 1 or 2 things with the Chromebooks, but we're working through those. And again, we have Mac devices to supplement, so we've pretty much got all the bases covered, even with a less expensive device. And my next, gather reseller quotes for their current iPads, because as a district, we're going to own all these iPads, roughly 2,300 iPads at the end of the year. I do plan on moving some of those to the elementary schools, and just to further extend the life, but probably resell about 80% of those devices. And again, we would like to incorporate the annual payment into our 2018 budget.
Follow up on that last point. I want to just underscore that because we're going to move into the CIP discussion. And one of the things that, the operations and Finance Committee know from our CIP conversation was that in the original projections that the committees reviewed, we had, close to $1 million, $900,000 in CIP investment for technology, which has now been removed, and it's part of what we are considering today. So it's assuming that we are moving forward with one of those other options as our process moves forward. So right now, we are assuming that those 2 options are the ones that we're moving with, because we've not included in our CIP, based on our last conversation with the committees, we've not included that in our proposed CIP budget.
Question? Thank you.
What model of Chromebook are you looking?
Right now, we're looking at the Dell and the HP. Both are educational design devices with ruggedized cases, rubberized keyboards, waterproof keyboards. They can stand to a drop test of up to 4 feet, and they will bounce.
Good for high school.
Yeah, perfect for high school. Perfect for high school. They can be slammed into lockers. What's that?
Is that where you have distributed now?
Yes. We currently have a mix of Dell and HPs, but I'm probably going to go with our best pricing right now seems to be on the Dell, as far as that includes battery test life, twice as much, almost 2 times as much battery life with the Dell compared to the HP. And that the Dell has a better review overall through a lot of the PC Mags, all your traditional technology magazines that review Chromebooks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Morioni?
Thank you, Mike, for all of this hard work. I just want to say, when the district first got the iPads, they were just handed out. We got none of this background information. There was no analysis around, is this the best for our district? And is this, so I really appreciate all your hard work and doing the analysis in terms of the cost for the district. And I also think, I love the fact that you're getting it in the hands of the teachers and students for them to assess it, is where, they're going to be using it. So I really do just want to say thank you for your hard work on this.
Not a
and
problem,
staff.
it's a lot of fun.
Good.
It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Ms. Bendel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also like to echo to Mr. Derry your presentation, and I was a part of the initial Finance Committee meeting where you presented on this option back in October, and it was I thought that a lot of I thought that you made some really good changes and additions to the presentation, responded to the Finance Committee's questions and concerns. I think that this presentation of options is really clear and concise, and I think that the way that you're rolling it out with faculty as well as with students, and the next step being with focus groups. For me, it's about whether or not we are able to provide, quality technology tools and devices that students will use. That's at a cost that we can afford in our district. I would hate for us to invest in a new piece of technology only to find out that, there's a critical app that, teachers need, that, all, math or science teachers use that, isn't supported by Google. So I think that the way that you're kind of going about working with students and working with teachers to make sure that we're making the best decision is a good process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I also wanted to add that after your presentation from the Finance Committee, I actually did get myself a Chromebook just to test it out. And it's actually really fun. I like it. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I do have, if any of the board members would like to look at review, I do have a couple available that I'd be willing to loan out. They are fun devices.
Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it is still before the hour of 10 o'clock, so that brings us to any public comment. Seeing none, I would call for a motion for adjournment. Ms. Davis, seconded by Ms. Seeliger. All those in favor? That's unanimous.